When Carl Walther started his company, he initially produced hunting rifles based off the Martini action. But most people think of Walther as a pistol-producing powerhouse, and the first pistol most people think of is the Walther PP. While this was an earlier pistol, it wasn't the pistol that made them into the powerhouse. An earlier pistol would take that crown. To learn about that, please stay tuned and find out. Welcome to the Milsurp Mic Channel. When I picked up my Walther PP back in November, I originally intended to make a video on it since it was really the genesis for a truly modern pistol. But I started going down a Walther rabbit hole thanks to Mark Felton's video on Joseph Goebbels and the Model 8, and was able to pick up a couple pre-PP Walthers. So sit back and enjoy some history on the pistol that originally made Walther into a pistol powerhouse, the Model 4. The Walthers have been known as master gunsmiths in the towns that occupied the Thuringian Forest, such as Zella, St. Blasi, Melis, and Sewell for centuries. And Walther-marked flintlocks can be dated back to 1735. The current incarnation of Walther was founded by Karl Wilhelm Freund Walther, who was destined to be a firearms maker, as not only was he a Walther, but his mother was a direct descendant of Matthias Conrad Pistor, a well-known master gunsmith in the 18th century. Karl would serve several apprenticeships, including making Mauser-type rifles with Jopp. He would open his own shop in 1886 at the age of 26 in Zella, St. Blasi. His shop would make the target rifles based on Martini and Ant actions. As his father, Karl also married the daughter of another gunmaker, the revolver manufacturer Friedrich Pickett, and they would have 5 sons, the most notable being Fritz, born in 1889. Karl would prosper and his company grow to the point he needed a 3-story factory by 1903. Fabrique Nationale in Belgium would start producing the John Moses Browning designed simple blowback auto-loading pistols, with the models 1900 and 1905s being popular. This, along with Fritz writing letters from his Berlin apprenticeship essentially telling Karl, "The future is now, old man."
The future's now, old man.
When it comes to autoloaders being the future of pistols versus revolvers, this would persuade Walther to enter this arena. When Fritz returned in 1908, he and Karl would work to develop 2 different pistols. The Venus Pistole, which was a 32 ACP pistol similar to the FN 1900 and Dreisen 1907, which never went past prototype stage, and a 25 ACP mouse gun that would eventually be released as the Sebelstadt pistol model 1909. Now I'm going to put that on the across the board in case I butcher that pronunciation. This is retroactively called the Model 1 after the release of the Model 2. Since the Walther factory was extensively bombed during World War II and most of its records destroyed, there's a lack of agreement as to when these were first produced and sold. There are some 1908 and even earlier production dates from earlier literature and Walther advertisements for a while, but the patent was applied for on August 9, 1909 and granted on June 22, 1911, with the first advertisements for the pistol appearing in November 1910. The Model 1 was a moderate success with around 30,000 sold, mainly due to the size and price undercutting of everyone except cheaply made Spanish-made pistols, but improvements were in store. The Model 1 had a complicated takedown and many small parts that were easy to lose. Work was underway on 2 pistols, one to fire 25 ACP and the other 32 ACP, which would eventually become the Models 2 and 3. While the Model 1 was striker fired, the Models 2 and 3 introduced an internal hammer. The recoil spring would be moved from a plunger that was beneath the barrel, as well as the sleeve surrounding the barrel on the Model 1 for takedown, to the spring surrounding the barrel and held in by a bushing on the 2 and 3. Field stripping the pistol for the Models 2 and 3 would become more familiar to those who would later experience the PP and its derivatives. While earlier and Walther-inspired sources would give these pistols a 1910 release date, it seems the general thought now is that they were released sometime in 1912 to 1913. The patent that covered these pistols was filed in October 1911 and granted in February 1913. While the Model 3 was intended as a larger caliber pocket pistol, 6 rounds of 32 ACP, it still wasn't much use for slightly longer than point-blank range. A larger version intended for a holster with police and possible military use in mind would still come from the same patent. This would also be the pistol that made Walther into a pistol production powerhouse and a world-class firearms manufacturer, the Model 4. Let's take a closer look at the Walther Model 4. Now, before I talk about the pistol itself, I'm just going to talk about there were 4 different variations of the pistol. Nothing major changing, but what you can tell from the outside, it basically goes by the striations. That's usually the biggest clue to the variations. Now, the first variation had striations similar to this, except they were vertical, straight up and down. And then the second variation, that came about because of the 250,000 that were ordered by the German military, and for cost-saving measures, it took less cuts. So you see these larger striations with fewer cuts on the second variation. The early ones did not have a rear sight, the later ones do, so this is a late second variation. The third variation was post-war for civilian and police use. They went back to the smaller striations, more cuts, but at this time they're angled. And then the fourth variation basically just changes up the slide marking so it matches what's on the Model 8s and 9s. The cities of Zella St. Blasi and Mehlis, I think they combined sometime after the war, so the slide marking basically just shows that. Now let's talk a little bit about the pistol itself. It does hold 8 rounds of 32 ACP in the magazine. It has you see the ejection is actually on the left side as compared to the right side on most pistols in this later Model 8. And it has an external extractor. So let's take this apart and look at the inside a little bit. To field strip it, I'm going to first show that she is empty. And on these, this is the safety, and it's kind of actually an awkward place when you try to shoot, because you got to take you got to pull your thumb all the way back. But on these older, German pistols, in German, the F actually means safe, and the S actually means fire. So let's go ahead and take this apart. Basically take your bushing, turn it towards you, and it comes out like that. Your spring and your sleeve comes out, and when your sleeve's in there, that's actually what you see when you look through the where it ejects at. So take this off. You kind of got to be a little firm with it. I have trouble with this sometimes, so this may take a couple attempts to come off on this one. There we go. Finally get it to come up, and then it just slides off like that. Now, one thing you got to keep in mind, these little indentations here, to get it back on, you got to mate it up with these to get it back in. Maybe editing mic will, you don't have to do this for field strip, maybe editing mic will speed this up a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and take this this off here real quick so we can get a little closer look on the inside. So, and what we have is we have our internal hammer. I'm gonna go ahead and just pull the trigger here. You see your internal hammer pop up right there. The safety just basically blocks the cocked hammer. So you put that down, and it blocks the, gotta go around that way, and it just blocks the cocked hammer. And as you can see, it has the concentric spring around the fixed barrel, and then it has the sleeve on there. Now the Model 4 is basically just a lengthened Model 3, and that's why you have an extra barrel, but the bushing, the extra barrel and the bushing actually add an extra inch from the Model 3. So let's go ahead and put this back together. And the grips on this, I do realize that the grips on this look like absolute garbage on this one, but believe it or not, this one is actually easier to field strip than this one, so that's why I'm using this one. So again, this got to just kind of hit her just right in there, remember, and then put our sleeve and our spring back around the barrel, put our bushing back in there. Remember, it was turned towards you, so you finds in there, turns that way. Function check. And we are ready to go. If you like what you've seen so far, please give me a like below. Now let's get to some shooting footage and some more history. In May of 1915, the GPK, which is the acronym for what translates in English to Weapons Examination Commission, ordered 250,000 Model 4 pistols as Behelfspistolen, or substitute standard pistols, which were allowed for use as frontline duty. While the 32 ACP is underpowered when compared to US and British .45 calibers, as well as Germany's own and Austria-Hungary's 9mm calibers, it did match the French and Russian revolver offerings, as well as being much higher quality than the Spanish pistols being imported into France. Similar to the Spanish Ruby used in France, Walther would have to subcontract some of its manufacturing, and these subcontractors would subcontract work out themselves. The subcontractor markings can be found on the trigger guard. Unlike the Spanish Rubies, the quality did not suffer. Around this time, Walther became a producer of the lockwork for the MG0815, which proved to be much higher quality and worked far better than those made by other manufacturers. This success would lead Walther to move to a new facility, the Karl Walther Waffenfabrik in Zella St. Blasi, and sell the original factory. Not everything was successful for Walther during the war. In 1915, the military would request supplemental pistols that would fire the 9mm parabellum round of the P08 Luger. Walther would make an enlarged version of the Model 4, which would become the Model 6. But 9mm in a simple blowback configuration proved to not be a good combination, as it had heavy recoil, was unreliable, and succumbed to parts breakage. Walther would stop production of the larger pistol in 1917 after only around 1,000 were produced. After the Versailles Treaty neutering of Germany took hold post-war, production of 9mm pistols were verboten. The pistol factory would be forced to close for a short period of time in 1919. Walther would produce optical components in this time frame. Fritz would also start to consider new designs, leading to the later Model 8, which I'll talk about in a later video. What kept Walther afloat during the reopening was having a high-quality, no-frills 32 AC pistol that saw demand on the commercial and police markets in the Model 4, and not being tied to larger caliber military pistols, as the Allies would allow Walther to produce the Model 4, 5, and 7 starting in 1920. Walther would continue to produce the Model 4 while they spooled up production of the Models 8 and 9 through 1924, while putting together, quote, new pistols from parts and stock until 1929, when the PP would be introduced. The Model 4 would see use with German soldiers and police through World War II. Between 1945 and 1968 Gun Control Act, many of these pistols would make it to the United States via importers. One more point of history cleanup before I talk about my pistols. Karl Walther would die on July 9, 1915 at the fairly young age of 56. Fritz, Georg, and Erich would continue on, with Fritz taking over the day-to-day management of the company. Now I have two Model 4s, the first being a late second variation made during the Great War. Now besides the serial number, you can tell us by fewer cuts for the slide striations, and it's a late second because there's a rear sight, which was added kind of halfway through the 250,000 pistol contract. The other is a fourth variation towards the end of the entire run. It has many slanted striations on the side, and the slide markings are the same as those in the Model 8s and 9. I only had the wartime one when I took it out shooting. It functions very well and was a fun little pistol to shoot. It points naturally and seems well balanced in firing. By modern standards, this is way too small for what I consider a police or holster carry pistol, but you can do far worse for an older concealed weapon. And its reliability is far better than many other pistols of the time. The Walther model fares very well against its contemporaries, and only the FN 1910, Colt 1903, and Savage 1907 can be considered in the same class when it comes to early blowback semi-auto pistols. Which, if you want to learn more about another early semi-auto pistol, click over here. Please join the GOA and get a discount with my code below. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a great day.